So I'm going to give you a little bit of a whistle stop of some of the work that I do. When I was putting this together, I realised that I do absolutely love birds. And a lot of my more recent work has got as figured lots of birds in it. This is a little sari blouse, a trolley, which has a beautiful quote on the back of it, and I've just embroidered a bird of paradise on the back. And the text, if you can't read that, it says, "We are birds in the treetops at dawn, exciting the activity in the canopy." And I read that from a newsletter about a group of American activists, and I absolutely loved the sentiment. So I sewed that onto the back of a sari blouse. This is a recent little bird I did for a friend, and this is a textile bird. This is hopefully what some of the things that we will be looking at this afternoon. And if you can see, I've put a little peacock feather on the back as a tail. So I'm very much into adding all sorts of different things to my work. So beads and feathers. There's little bits of sari there added on, cup and appliqued on. And here are some little sneak preview of the bangles I asked you to collect. If you've got bangles, great. If you haven't, please don't worry about it. I've got a cheap version as well. And there also are some lovely birds there on the other side, made by different groups of people that I've worked with. So again, a little bit of a preview of the kind of things that we can make this afternoon. And because we are in this wonderful LOK VIRSA festival, I was looking at, for a bit of inspiration, some Persian textiles and artists. And the most famous, probably, Persian artist of time is Habalala. And this is a beautiful picture of a piece that he created in, I think it was 1610, so the 17th century. So what's that, hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And I just absolutely love the way that he has created these beautiful birds. Can I ask, can we just pop our selves on mute, because it's a bit tricky if people are moving around, if that's okay. Thank you, lovelies. Yeah, so Habalala, beautiful imagery of birds, and it's this kind of thing that we're going to be looking at this afternoon. And here's another piece of, this is actually a ceramic tile painting from Persia, again, from the 17th century again. So beautiful imagery of birds standing on flowers and in flight. And I love the simplicity of Persian embroidery. And back to the mindfulness thing I was talking about earlier, one of the most fantastic things I think is just getting lost in the repetition of stitching and creating beautiful things that don't have to be complicated, but are really simple. So if we look at this lovely simple textile of I think it's a bull. I'm going to say it's a bull with a lovely long tail. How simple is the stitching, but how beautiful is the overall design? And that simplicity is something that I want to capture with us this afternoon. So again, back to this thing about, you don't have to be a fantastic artist, you just have to be able to show a bit of I don't know, willing and keenness to give something a go. And to contrast with the very simple stitching, I've just put a picture there of a beautiful piece of very archetypal Persian embroidery. So it's almost like a kind of leaf pattern, isn't it? And also, have you seen how the pattern kind of moves, the way that the leaves and the textile goes in the directions of movement. So that's something very beautiful as well. And you can look at all of these things online, obviously, to get some more inspiration. And a slightly fuzzy photo, I'm sorry, but this is a particular Persian bird that I used to create the pieces that I'm going to show you this afternoon as a starting point. And what I love about this particular pattern of the bird is it's really unusual, because his little face is pointing away. So our usual pattern of a bird is its beak facing out the way, but he's looking behind himself, and I really like that design. And just to finish, here's another little example of a Persian embroidered bird. Really kind of extravagant shapes, lovely shapes, and beautiful colours. Fantastic, thank you. Oh, thank you so much for letting me know that. Sorry. Yeah, so there we go. So can you see the chain stitch on this side for his wings? And different types of running stitch there around the body and across his belly, I suppose, and then around his eyes, etc. Now these stitches here, this stitch is here. Oh, this is like patting your tummy and rubbing your head at the same time. Yeah, this stitch is here is like a glorified chain stitch, and I'll show you how to do that if you don't know how to do that. But again, I would say if you're not able to master this afternoon, please do not worry, because we'll be looking, you can look at YouTube clips. That's where I've learned a lot of my stuff, and you can do it then at your own pace when you're without the pressure of being part of the workshop. So fantastic, thank you. Right. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to, if you've got some plain material or any material that you've got in front of you, and we're going to now you can either draw on a piece of paper first for your stencil, or if you're brave, you can just draw straight onto the material with a normal felt tip pen or a biro pen. But I'm going to go for drawing a very simple bird. I'm not going to go with the one facing backwards, because I think if you want to do that, you can do that perfect. But if you want to just kind of make along with me this afternoon, I'm going to go for a more simple version. And I was trying to think how I would describe that. It's a bit like a kind of shaped like a bit of toothpaste, or like a banana with a pointy bottom. I don't know how you describe it, but it's a really, really simple shape. So if you want to have a go at just drawing that either onto paper, then cut it out, so you use it as a stencil, or you do directly onto the material. So I'm just literally freehand drawing that, and I'm cutting that out. And then you can lay that on your material and just draw around it with your felt tip pen or your biro pen. And top tip here, please make sure you've got two pieces of material, one under the other. Now, if it's a large piece, you can obviously fold it over, can't you? But make sure you've got two pieces, because by doing it one on top of the other, you'll have exactly the same shape, that you two shapes exactly the same for when you cut it out. Yep. So cut that out then when you're ready, holding your two pieces of material quite tightly together so that they don't move around. So you should be left with two identical pieces of material that are in the shape of a bird. And of course, if you have used a stencil, you can use that many times, can't you? So you can make a flock of birds. Lovely. So if you've got, here's a top tip. If you've got light material and you've used a felt tip pen or a dark pen, and you've still got, when you've cut it out, you've still got the little marks. Can you see I've got little marks of pen around it? What I'm just going to do is just turn the whole thing in on itself. So I've got rid of the pen. The pen's now inside. So I've got two lovely clean pieces of material without any pen marks. Yeah. If you've done that, if you haven't threaded your needle yet, if you've got one, can you just thread your needle? I have used any embroidery, any thread at all, any sewing thread of any type. If you do get a chance to get some embroidery thread. That's lovely, and you need quite a big needle, a needle with a big eye for that. But if you haven't got that, any kind of sewing thread is absolutely fine. Now we're going to decorate our bird. So where's my lovely one gone? So I didn't bring you back to my little bird here. Here's a top tip. It's a lot easier to decorate your bird before you stuff him. So I have done this, as I'm going to turn it around, but I'm going to turn this around. So I did some other decoration, a plique decoration on the back of this bird. I'm not so keen on that bit. I really like this bit. So when I hang it up, I'm going to hang it up in a way that really this bit's the bit that's on display and not necessarily the back bit. However, should you want to hang it up so it spins around, then you will want to do both sides of your bird, won't you? You want to have a look at both sides so that people can enjoy it from both sides. And you might, if you hang it in the window, for example, you can enjoy it from both inside and outside of the window. But I'm going to go with an idea that we're making a one-sided bird for now, and then again, when you have some more time to decorate the other side, you can do that at your leisure as well. So my top tip is decorate the bird sides before we sew them together. Makes it a lot less fiddly. So we've got our two pieces, and I'm going to put one to the side, and I'm going to focus and concentrate on my side that I want to decorate. Now, in the list of materials to gather for this afternoon, we had things like let's have a look. We had things like buttons and beads, and that's a bit of a giveaway, isn't it, in the title? And I've just got some really mixed up box of different beads and buttons. The beads that I think are probably the best kind of beads are the ones that are ones with the larger holes, but also you might have these knocking around. These are the things that we all had, our children had, those little plastic I don't know if you had those, where you pop them on the little shape and then you iron them and make them kind of melt into each other. You might still have some of those knocking around the house, and they're great for this kind of thing because they've got nice big holes. But I've gathered all sorts of things from the bottom of my bead box. I suppose from an environmental point of view, one of the things I'm really keen to do is make use of materials that I've already got in the house rather than buying more and more stuff. And of course, as an artist, I do collect things, and people are very kind and do give me all sorts of things. But I haven't bought anything new for this workshop apart from a packet of pipe cleaners, but everything else I've got in my kind of bead box. And one thing I would say to you is if you are able to, what's the right way of saying it? I would try and avoid buying things like sequins, to be honest with you, because sequins and glitter are so bad for the environment because they don't biodegrade. Glitter especially is really bad because it doesn't biodegrade, and it gets kind of into our water systems and then goes into the oceans, and it's a bit like microbeads. They just don't ever degrade. So try and avoid glitter if you can. You can buy biodegradable glitter, but it is quite a lot of money. So I've tended to kind of steer away from the glitter, and I haven't bought any new sequins, but I've got a few odd sequins knocking around that I've obviously had for quite a long time. So there's my buttons and my beads. I've also, I think I said to you about looking for some broken jewelry or old bits of jewelry as well, and I found again in my box of treasures some lovely I'm not quite sure what these have come from, maybe a dress or a necklace, I think, probably, actually. So I've got a few of those that I've found, and an embellishment I think that probably came off of a cardigan or a jumper a long time ago. And then this, I think, is pretty amazing. Not quite sure where I found that, but from in the bottom of a box, and no doubt. And some of this stuff you can buy really cheaply, actually, from local haberdashery shops. So you can often buy them individually, or you can buy lines of embellishments by the meter or the half meter. So don't be afraid to ask for half a meter. Just because something may be you know, sold by the meter, they will often sell you it by a half meter. And with this kind of project, you don't need masses of it anyway. It's like little pieces, isn't it? And I've just got some ribbons, and I've got my trusty pile of wool. Here it is, my trusty pile of wool of all different colors as well. So we'll be coming back to that in a little while. Okay, so I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I'm going to show you some basic stitches, and then I'm going to invite you to take some time to sew things onto your bird if you want to, or do particular stitches if you want to as well. So I'm going to get my pre-threaded needle, and I'm using a contrasting, this is a brown thread, so hopefully you'll be able to see this. I'm going to do a little ring. Back to my bird here. I'm going to focus on the little ring underneath his head to get the little shape of his head, and I'm going to do that in a chain stitch in a second. Okay, anybody know how to do chain stitch? Fantastic, thank you. Those that don't worry, it's really easy. So I'm going to have to do this in reverse, aren't I? So we've got our needle, we're going behind so this is the outside piece that we're going to see. So we're threading our needle through, carefully bringing it through. And if you've knotted it, I hope you've knotted the end of your thread with a couple of knots, so it won't just come straight out again. Okay, there we go. So a chain stitch is called a chain stitch because it looks like a chain. And we go back, we use our needle and go back through the same hole that we've just come out of. So we're going back through carefully, and don't pull it all the way, but bring your thread through and until it is about a centimetre. So we've got a loop. Can you see the loop? You've got a loop at the front and you've got your thread at the back. And what you're going to do, got your little loop here. And what you're going to do is you're going to bring your needle back through the felt about, let's say, about 5 millimeters from the last stitch. Yeah. So you're just going to get that out of the way there. So you're going to pop it back through. Now, as you push your needle through, stop and turn over, and make sure that you've popped your needle through the loop. Does that make sense to everybody? And then when you start pulling, pull very gently, very gently. And then when you get to the point of no return, you'll see that your loop is shrinking. Now the danger, don't pull hard, because the temptation is to pull very hard. If you pull very hard, you just get a very indecipherable stitch, and it doesn't look like a chain. So the important thing is not to pull it too hard. So can you see what I've got there, like a little circle, little teardrop shape? Okay, now we're going to repeat that again. So again, we're going to go back through, don't worry, it's going to be fine. We're going to go back through the same hole we've just come out of. And again, don't pull too hard, just pull gently the thread through until it's about a centimetre or so from the edge. So you've got your little loop that's hanging out the other loop. And again, turning it around, you're going to bring your needle, and again another 5 millimeters. So we're doing a kind of scoop pattern around his neck. So we're bringing it in 5 millimeters, pop it through, turn over your fabric, and just check again that your needle, you might need to just unravel your loop a bit. Your needle has gone through the loop again, sorry. And again, if you pull through gently, gently, Again, temptation is to pull hard. Don't pull hard. There we are. Turn them up the right way. So what we've got is the beginnings of a chain that's going to go around his neck. Is that okay with everybody? If this isn't the stitch for you, please don't worry. Please don't worry. If it is for you, you carry on and continue your chain stitch around his neck till you get to the underneath his beak. Carry on doing that if you want to, and I'm going to show other people just a very simple running stitch. Let me just do a couple more chains. Yeah, so eventually you have a nice little chain around his neck. For those of you that aren't too keen on the chain, or you want to maybe spend some more time practicing that, that's absolutely fine. The loveliest stitch, I think, is just a very, very simple running stitch. So if I go back again to my bird that I made, I don't know if you can see, just underneath his chin, it is just a really simple running stitch, and that is so effective. And at the bottom here, on his tummy, there are some individual chains, some teardrops, but there's also this pattern that I've used, again, simple running stitches, but just use them to show different ways of using the stitch. Can you see? And the nicest thing, because you're doing this on one piece of material, you're not doing it on a like on the pre-stuffed bird, you don't have to worry about what the back looks like, because you're going to sew all the back in together. You're not going to see it anyway. So I'm going to do a little bit of running stitch. I think I might do a bit of running stitch across his tummy here. So I'm going to start again from the back, about 1/2 centimetre in from the edge. I'm going to pull my thread through. Now, depends how confident you are doing this. You can put your needle in and out a few times and pull it through, or you can just literally pop it through. Mind your fingers at the back, pop it through and pull it through nice and slowly. If you do that again. I love doing this kind of embroidery completely freehand. So again, I suppose I really love the randomness of this. I don't like doing things too precise. I think having a much more kind of handmade folk art kind of look is really so much nicer. There we go. So much nicer than trying to make something really beautifully polished. So I'm going in and out, simple as that. And for those that are this way minded, let me see if I've got the camera right, you can also pop your needle in and out a few times, can't you? And then very carefully, just pull it through. And again, it's very tempting to pull it hard. Don't. Just be nice and gentle. And then the stitches are nice and consistent and the fabric isn't being pulled. So if you're chaining, you carry on. If you're running stitching, you carry on as well. Going to finish this off so we can all be at the same stage. Now, so however you're creating, whether you're running stitching or you're chain stitching, or you're maybe doing a stitch of your own, which is perfectly lovely. I'm going to invite you just to embellish and decorate your little bird in exactly any way that you choose to. What I'm going to do now that I've got this, I'm at this stage, is I'm going to use some buttons, and I think I'm going to use a little bit of sparkly material just to sew on. So the principle of the applique and the buttons, I mean, I don't think I need to tell you how to show you how to sew a button on, but if you want me to, I'm more than happy to do that. But really it's just a case of choosing what you've got around you and just adding some embellishment. Now again, back to this idea that you're not going to see the back. This is my back of my piece. Now it's a bit messy and it doesn't matter, because when I sew it together with this piece, it's going to be completely clear, so I've got nothing to worry about. So rather than you cutting off your thread now, I'm going to ask you to keep your thread going, but you can just use one piece of thread, so you don't need to cut it off and start again. I'm just going to get rid of, having said that, I'm just going to get rid of mine because I've got 2 needles on the go, and that's going to confuse me. So for those that are wanting just to kind of get rid of their thread and maybe start another part of the bird, all I'm doing is going in and out about 1 millimeter apart from each other a couple of times just to secure my thread, and then I'm going to snip that off with a pair of scissors. So what I've got now is my little body of bird, and I'm going to start thinking about what I'm going to add on. So again, back to my pre-made, I've got a button. Where am I? A button for his eye with a sequin sewn on into the middle. I've got some really nice pieces that I cut off a piece of sari and a piece of scarf. From my other one, I've used several buttons there in a line, can you see, and a sequin for his eye. So they're the kind of things. This bird's eye is literally running stitch all the way in the shape of an eye, and the little eyelashes. So I quickly show you the back, which is very bad because I didn't decorate it, but inside it's obviously very messy because it's obviously the back of this piece. So all the little eyelashes are just a 1 stitch each, running stitch. So really, really simple. So I'm going to gather some buttons, I think, and some bits and pieces. And for this bit, I'm just going to put a bit of music on, and we're just going to spend some time, probably between 5 and 6 minutes, just decorating. Please don't rush, and don't feel you've got to finish anything, because you really don't. But it's just something about looking at what have you got in your collection that you can add to your bird, and try and keep the thread going if you can at the back. If you need to, if you're running out of thread, just do what I did, a couple of tiny little stitches, snip it off, and rethread your needle.
Jane?
Yes.
Somebody would like you to re-show the first stitch, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So while other people are just doing their own thing, I will show you the chain stitch. Tell you what I'll do it on a piece of blank material so that I can do it a little bit closer to the camera. So chain stitch, here we come. Got a knot in our thread at the bottom. We'll do a bigger version so that we can follow together. So this is the front of our material. This is the back. If we work out that we're going to, let's just draw a line. I'm going to, this is the line. This is the line that I want to chain stitch along. So I'm going through the back of my material. I'm pulling my thread all the way through. And then I'm going to go back through the same hole. So I've got my thread on the outside and I'm going back through the same hole, or as close to that hole as I possibly can. What you might find is that because you go exactly through the same hole, your needle might get caught up in the thread underneath. Don't worry, just pull the needle out again and just be slightly to the side. So you're bringing your needle out again, resist pulling all the way through. So you're pulling your thread. Can you see what's happening? We've got the loop. And we want to stop when we've got about 1 centimetre worth of thread left. So if I pull that through now, it'll just pop off the whole material. So I don't want to do that. So that's the front of our piece of fabric. Turn it over. And what you're doing now, that line that you've drawn on the other side, you want to put your needle back through about 5 millimeters through. Yep, so you've popped your needle through the thread. Again, don't pull it through. Turn it over. So very carefully. Can you see now what you've got is, let me just see if you can see that you've got the needle there and you've got the thread here, the loop here. And what you want to do is make sure that your needle goes through the loop. When you've got it through the loop again, you just pull it gently, resisting the urge to pull it really hard. So what you've got is a little loop. That's your first chain. Back through the hole again, the one you've just come out of. Again, remembering if it gets a bit tangled up, just do it slightly to the side, but you're going back through the loop and you're going in that hole. Yeah, turn it over, pulling it through, but again, being careful you don't pull it all the way through. This is the kind of stitch that if you do a YouTube search, there's loads and loads of different tutorials for things like stitches like this. And again, you're going back 5 millimeters, sorry, back through. And you see it's come straight through the loop. Pull it through gently. And there we have another little chain. I'll just do one more. So we've gone back through the same hole, pull it through. If you can hold on to that to stop it going all the way through. Got your loop. I'm going to put my needle about 5 millimeters away from the previous stitch. Pop it through and then make sure it goes all the way through the loop of the material, of the thread, sorry, and out it comes. Yeah, is that okay? Are we okay with that? What we should be looking at then is this little chain stitch. And the back will look like a back stitch or a running stitch. But back stitch is really running stitch with no gaps in it. So that's the chain. But don't worry if you can't grasp that. It's absolutely fine. Just have a little look on the YouTube when you get some time. Once you get into the swing of it, it's a lovely stitch to do. Is that okay? So I'm just sewing a couple of buttons on. One of the things I quite like to do is think about the kind of colour scheme that I'm doing. So on the reverse side of my one here, I gathered they're all yellows and ivory coloured buttons that I could find, rather than just sticking, go for it, there's no rule, but I just thought it would be quite nice to kind of keep a bit of a colour palette for me. So I've gone for yellows and lighter, oh maybe sorry, wrong way, lighter colours, but feel free to add anything at all that you want to, or any colours that you want to. And I've just got some orange and yellow buttons that I'm sewing on in a line, and I'm just literally going up through the hole, back down again, and again I'm not bothering, I don't care what it looks like at the back because that's going to be covered up anyway. Mind your fingers as you're doing this. There's absolutely no rush, just take your time. Put the music back on. Oh. If like me, you don't concentrate on what you're doing and you end up putting the thread through the wrong end of the button, around the wrong side of the material, what you can do very carefully is try and put your needle back through the same hole. If that works, then fantastic. If it doesn't, you just cut it off and start again. And again, just to secure the thread, just do a couple of tiny little stitches before you sew your button on, and that keeps the thread nice and tight. I'm going to use a button for the bird's eye, but just to show you the technique of using the sequin or a bead as well, because that's quite nice. I'm going to choose a nice big button from a bird's eye, and then I'm going to choose a bead. I'm going to go for, let's have a look, it's got quite, yeah, I'm going to go for a nice big white button here for his, oh, he's upside down, his eye, and I'm going to add on to it a gold bead that I've got. So put the bead to one side for now. I'm going to, again, if your thread is still connected, that's great, don't worry, that's great. But if you need to cut it off and a couple of little stitches to secure it, and then remember to knot it at the end afterwards. I'm going to sew the button on as normal. So in and out a couple of times to secure it in place. And back through. So my needle is now on the right side of the fabric. I'm just going to pop my bead through the needle, so it will go down, and then I'm going to pop my needle back through the other hole of the button. So I'm just basically securing that on. So can you see what I've done there? I've just literally used a bead on top of a button. And again, just to make sure it's nice and secure, I'm going to go through, a couple more times. So once I've got my thread through, I'm going to pop it through the whole of the bead again, pull it through and back. That's why the beads with the bigger holes are better, because you won't get your needle stuck through the whole of the bead. Right, I think we'll just move on now, because I want to just get you to sew your your two pieces together. So as I said earlier, you can take as long as you want to over this. So I'm just showing you some ideas, and you're doing some stuff together with me. But afterwards, you can do anything, any design or any technique that you want to. You can use, as I say, buttons, beads, bits of ribbon, bits of sari. I've got a little piece of sari here that I might add on to my little bird's tail, and I would just literally secure that with a very simple running stitch, again based on the idea that this is really about looking as beautifully handmade and not as polished. This is the look we're looking for, like a piece of faux art really. So I've just very quickly sewn that on to his tail. Okay, I've run out of thread, so I'm going to just snip that off, and then I would rethread my needle, but I've got one already threaded. So this is my external, the piece of the bird that I want the world to see. We're just going to do a very simple wing now, and I think I asked you to think about any contrasting or patterned fabric that you had, and I've just used a very simple blue patterny fabric, and I've just cut, I suppose you'd call it like a teardrop, really, like a teardrop shape. And again, I don't want you to worry too much about that. It's just literally a shape of a teardrop. And again, you can do that using a stencil first, and then draw it round on the material, or you can go straight for drawing on the material. So just on a piece of contrasting fabric, or the same fabric, is entirely up to you. I'm just going to draw a very simple teardrop shape. And of course, because birds have two wings, we're going to fold our material in half, so that I've got basically two pieces of material, haven't I? And when I cut that shape out, I will ideally have two exactly the same shapes. So I'm cutting my wings. What I've got now, two little teardrop shapes for wings. And again, with a running stitch, I'm just going to do a couple of stitches along here at the bottom to secure the little wing in place. I want the wing to kind of flap freely, so I don't want to sew it too tightly onto the body. So I'm just doing, I think I'm going to do three stitches actually at the bottom, just to hold it in place. And we can fix the other wing onto the back of the body once it's been sewn together and stuffed. So you've sewn your little wing onto your body of your bird. And now we're going to do a really simple, going back to the running stitch, a really simple running stitch all the way around the bodies. Can you see how I've just joined? I've basically just joined the two pieces together. So I am putting my needle and thread to one side. It's still connected, which is fine, and I'm matching up the two pieces together. So that's the front and that's the back. And I'm going to very simply just flap his wing down out of the way so you don't sew it to the body again. I'm just going to very simply do a running stitch all the way around the body. But what's really important is don't go all the way around and finish it off. Leave a gap of about 3 centimeters, because that's where we need to put our stuffing in. So I'm just going to invite you now just to literally all the way round, about 3 millimeters in from the edge. A very simple running stitch all the way round. Now, I'm not going to expect you to have completed this, because I want to make sure that I give you all the other little ideas for embellishments and things as well. So in your own time, you'll running stitch that all the way round, leaving a gap at the bottom of about 3 centimeters. I'm just going to show you just very quickly, because then you can come back to this in your own time. So I've just done a running stitch, and I'm going to stitch that all the way around. Where did I start? I started at the top of his body, underneath his wing, and moved his wing out of the way. So you'll get this lovely little simple but lovely folky kind of image, or the stitch all the way around. So when I get to this end, at this end here, which is his bottom, and which will be the other end of the stitching when I've come to the end, I've left 3 centimeters, and I'm going to stuff it. Now, again, in the true spirit of not buying anything, you know, just using what you've got around you, I used I used some old wool that had kind of got itself completely knotted up into a big ball of unusable wool, and I stuffed this little bird with an old ball of wool. You can use cotton wool, you can use old scraps of material, and in fact I always keep my old bits of felt, because that's perfect. So little tiny scraps of felt, tiny scraps of material, you just pop it into the hole. So the hole that I made would have been here. I left it open, so sewed all the way around, left it open, popped in the stuffing, and then just carried on with my running stitch. And here's a little tip: if you haven't got cotton wool, or you haven't got bits of wool, there is nothing like a bit of loo roll. So a little bit of loo roll. We've all got this, haven't we? Some of us have got more than others at the moment. And you just shove that inside the bird, and it's perfect. And as long as you don't stuff it too hard, it's all you need is just a little softening just to make it 3-dimensional. So if you haven't got anything else, a bit of trusty loo roll is perfect. Scrunch it in a little ball and pop it inside, and then finish it off with a running stitch. Okay, so I'm going to move on now to the other bits of embellishment that I wanted to show you. I asked you if you were able to find a bangle, and if you were, then fantastic. And I'm going to show you how to make one of these really lovely little hangings that will go at the bottom of your bird, and we've got on the bottom of our bird. And I'm going to fix him. I'm going to fix this on the bottom of this bird eventually. So this is literally just a bangle, a metal bangle, and some wool. That's all you need, and a little bit of ribbon. If you haven't got a bangle, it doesn't matter. You can also use an old empty sellotape ring, like I suggested that you did. And if you haven't got anything like that, another top tip is I got this from a top of a Chinese takeaway lid box, so it's a bit manky at the back, but it's nice and silvery and shiny at the front. I found it, retrieved this from the recycling bag, which is a piece of card that had some cheese on it. So I cleaned it and dried it off, and I've now got this piece of lovely shiny card. And all you need to do with these, just draw a circle. So simple, I love it. You just draw a circle on your piece of card. Now you can use a cereal box. I think I've used an old box of firelighters here. It doesn't have to be anything fancy because you're going to cover it, of course, aren't you? And again, returning back to our lovely bird, that's literally just a piece of cardboard in a circle, wound round with the wool. And I'll show you that quickly. I just drew a circle. You can draw around a jam jar. I could draw around anything that's a circle, really. Cutting that out. Again, you can do this in your own time. Please don't rush. I'm just showing you how it can be done. Circle of card. And then what you do then with your scissors, very, very carefully, we're going to snip all the way round, and we're going to snip about 2 millimeters maybe apart, and it's a tiny little snip. It's just a little nick about a couple of millimeters, and it's going to be literally all the way round. So if you can see what I've done there, it's a bit difficult with the light, but there you go. So I'm snipping all the way round. Nearly there. Perfect. Lovely. So that really is the easiest way of creating the circle. If you've got a bangle, top tip again, if you've got the best kind of bangles to use are those that have got a slightly bumpy edge, like this one. Can you see? So they're slightly bumpier rather than completely smooth. I find that they're a lot easier for the wool to adhere to if they've got a little bump or a little bit of glitteriness or something on the surface. It means that it's not entirely smooth. Now, again, a little tip. When you're using wool, I find it a lot easier to roll a little ball of wool rather than using an enormous ball of wool and trying to pass it through the bangle each time. It becomes really cumbersome. So just make yourself a little tiny ball of wool. And I use, when I tend to make these little balls of wool, I use a little bit of masking tape or a little bit of sellotape at the end, so that I know where the end is, so I'm not spending my time all my time searching for the end. So very quickly, I'm just going to show you, I'm tying my little ball of wool, I'm just tying it around my bangle in a double knot. And you need a little bit of tension here because you want to make it not lose its shape. So we're going to wind it. There we go. Sorry, that's better, isn't it? Wind it so that it goes to the bottom and around the top, pulling it slightly, not too hard, but just pulling it slightly. This is why if it's bumpy, it's better because it doesn't slip. Oh, there we go. I have to do this a bit quicker. So it's a bit like a bicycle wheel, if you see the way it's. So you're just winding it up the opposite end of each other. Oh, I've got a bit of a knot here. People okay with that? So you wind that all the way round. And when you get to the end, so you've got to the end now. Now you've got to keep your finger on the wool itself, because you've got to keep it tense, because if you let go, it'll all unravel. And cut a length of wool about 15 centimeters maybe. So that's still connected to your little bangle, and you're going to, again, holding on to your wool, just thread it through. Yeah, thread it through a couple of times. Poke it through if you can. Ooh. And then what I'm doing is I'm passing it back through the loop. That will secure it nice and tightly. What a little. And it's the same principle with a little piece of card. So all I'm doing is I'm popping my wool through one of the slits that I made. And I'm just winding this through the little slits at the top and bottom, all the way round. And it just means that I'm not having to worry about having a bangle or not. So can you see how it's making like a little bicycle wheel as we go? So again, this is the kind of thing that you will do when you've got more time. Don't rush. It's getting to the end of mine now. Okay, that's that. So now you can either put a little bit of sellotape there, do the same idea of about 15 centimeters or so. So a little bit of tape probably is the best thing to use there, I think, just to secure it into place. But I'm just going to thread it through behind itself so that it doesn't come undone. So you're just securing that into place. So we've got another version. So we've got our bangle version. We've got our little cardboard version as well. And what I did with the cardboard version on this one is I just took some simple glue. The best glue for this is the PVA glue, you know, the white glue that you get from lots of craft shops and from lots of cheap shops like Poundland. If people know Poundland, that's always a great place to buy these kinds of things. And I just popped a little dot of glue, PVA glue, all the way around, and used a little sequin that I got in my stash just for each dot, and I covered it up so it's covered up the brown cardboard. If I turn it around, the thing I did on this side was I had a piece of necklace, beaded necklace that I'd found, and I did the same thing. I put a dot of glue all the way round the circle, and then laid the necklace very carefully, the beads very carefully onto the glue, and left it for a little while to dry so that it was nice and dry before I started trying to fix it to the bird. That's the thing, isn't it? We've got to be patient with these things. You can't always get things done immediately. If you're using glue, you do need to let it dry properly, because if not, it goes all over your fingers and makes an awful mess. Okay, so that's the bangle. And with this one, I went over it twice. So I used pink wool first, and then I went over it again with orange. So I've done a kind of two color version there, which is quite nice, I think. And what I've done is picked out the colors. So I used pink for this one because I'd used pink felt. So I wanted to pick out the colors that were in the piece. So this actually would probably fit really nicely on that one because it's got orange in as well as the pink. Okay. Just making sure we have enough time to do all these lovely things. And the next thing I'm going to show you, once you've mastered that one, is our fork pom-pom. Always a favourite, I think. So again, top tip, get a ball of wool and your fork. Has everybody got a fork with them? Hey, brilliant. Forks aloft proudly. Right, so we're going to get our ball of wool. Now, I find that if you have got some ribbon or something a little bit stronger than the wool that you're using, so it could be a piece of string or it could be a ribbon, I find that that's always easier to use for the tying bit in the middle. If you haven't got that, that's absolutely fine. What I would say to you is take a piece of wool in a different colour to the colour that you want your pom-pom to be, so that you don't get mixed up. It'll all make sense in a second. So I'm going to make a yellow pom-pom. So I've got a piece of pink wool here, and I'm going to fold it in half so it's twice as strong. Okay. So with your fork aloft, let's hope that you've got, it doesn't matter if you haven't, but let's hope that you've got a fork that's got 4 prongs on it, because 4 prongs means that there's an exact gap in the center of your fork, which I have just put my little bit of double wool through. Okay. So that's my tying bit for my pom-pom. So what we need to do is hold that in our hand out of the way. And you get your wool. Again, take my masking tape off so that it's nice and unknotted, whatever the opposite of knotted is. And all we're literally going to do is we're going to maybe hold the wool on with your thumb. Sorry, I'm trying to do this opposite. That's it. Okay. Okay, so what we've got is we've got our fork. We're holding our piece of different coloured wool with our hand out of the way. And we're literally, can you say, just literally, couldn't be any simpler. You're just literally wrapping your wool around your fork. So we're wrapping it round. Perfect. See lots of wrapping going on and winding. It's brilliant. Okay. So I'm going to stop there. I think I probably got enough wool for my pom-pom. Okay, I'm cutting the wool off. I'm cutting the end off, not the wool off. Cutting the end off. Okay, so what we've now got is our fork wrapped with wool. And I've got my piece of contrasting colour either side of that. Yep. This is where you wish you were an octopus, because you need about 5 hands for this. So what we're going to do now is we're going to, if you've got somebody with you, you can do this. With a partner. So you get your partner to hold the fork up in the air for you. So you've got 2 free hands. If you're like me and you're on your own, you've got to pop your wool through the gap. Can you see the middle hole? And you're tying a knot. Now be careful not to pull. If you're using wool, be careful not to pull so hard that you snap the wool. That's why we've done it in 2 half. We've done it double strength by folding it in half. Can you see what I'm doing? I'm pulling a knot. Yep. So we've got a knot there, and we're going to do it. Trying to keep that wool as tight as you can. Can you try and do another knot? So you've basically got the double knot, so you're securing it in place. So what you should have now is this. Yep. That's a bit like a bow of wool. Okay. So very carefully slide that off your fork. At this stage, if you think that your middle wool is a bit loose, you can, because you now don't have to worry about holding it, you can pop it on the table. You can tie it again a little bit tighter. I'm going to do that. Tie it in a couple of knots again, just a little bit tighter. But again, be careful not to pull it so hard that it snaps. So we're back to this now, and we're going to take our scissors, and again, very carefully, we're just going to snip the loops of the wool at the sides. Can you see? Just literally snipping away, and your pom-pom emerges. Be careful not to cut the contrasting wool. Try and keep that out of the way with your fingers. So a pom-pom is becoming alive. Other side. Again, keeping your fingers out of the way and making sure you don't cut the ribbon or the wool that you're using to have tied it in the middle. And again, you can do this at your own pace. And there we have. So then what we're going to do is give it a bit of a whoosh around in your hand. And we've got our lovely pom-pom. And you might need a little bit of a haircut just to snip off the ends. All I'm doing there, giving him a little bit of a haircut, a little bit of a trim. Now this is where our big bead, the beads with the larger holes comes in again, because you might want to thread a couple of beads onto this wool before you tie it onto the bottom of your bangle. So if you've got some larger beads, then like I have here, you can just very carefully thread them through, or thread it through. I don't think I want to. I think I want to leave it without beads on. So that's our little pom-pom. So if we go back to our little bangle, it's kind of easy, isn't it? Because you can just slip the wool through. With the cardboard, what you want to do on the back of it is just slip the wool, one side of the wool of your pom-pom, through one of the pieces of the bicycle spoke, if you like. Let's pop it through. And then I'm going to tie that one to the other, just in a couple of simple knots. So I've tied my little pom-pom onto my little bicycle wheel bangle, and I'm going to just carefully snip off the ends to neaten it up a bit. There we go. Looking rather lovely. And I will take in my pre-stuffed bird with loo roll, that will be stuffed with loo roll. I'm going to think of a way now, plan a way now of joining this to the bottom of my bird, so that eventually we'll have this really lovely little hanging bird with the pom-pom on the bottom. So the best way to do this, to join this wool to the bird, is to make a little loop with the wool, like so. So, you know, you can just make a little loop, and then returning to your needle and thread, you can just do a very simple little stitch at the back just to secure that in place. Just do that very quickly. And again, you'll be able to do it much neater because you'll have much more time than me. His little flappy wing. That's our beautiful little bird. Whistle stop tour of a beautiful Persian inspired bird. I'm going to show you quickly two more things. Let's hope we can do two more things. One thing I want to show you is a pipe cleaner headdress, because I thought, what a fantastic thing I invented. I just wanted to show you how to make this. So if you're in your local pound shop at some point, you might want to invest in a packet of pipe cleaners on that side as well. Make some space here. So I've got a pipe, just one pipe cleaner for the middle, and I've used 3 other pipe cleaners, and all I've done is cut random sized pieces from each pipe cleaner. So three pieces out of each pipe cleaner. So there you go. And this is so lovely. I just love doing this. So all you do is you take your first little piece of pipe cleaner. This is the stalk of your feather or your headdress, and you just literally be careful with your fingers, because obviously these bits are a little bit sharp, aren't they? Just wrap it round. And what I like is to try and do slightly larger and then slightly smaller sizes as you go down. So you're just wrapping it around your pipe cleaner. So I'll just do this quickly because I didn't ask you to bring pipe cleaners, but it's just a little extra thing to think about doing. Right, so you can go down as far as you want to. I've put five little pieces there, and all I'm going to do is just curl the edges around a little bit. Might curl the top as well a little bit. What you could do is put a bead on there, pop a bead on, curl it round. So I've made my little shape. I'm just making some curly edges. Go a little bit random shapes there. And then what I discovered was the best thing to do to make it nice and secure is, if you get a chance to pop, this is the bit where you have to wait sometimes, is I just wanted to pop a little dob of PVA glue on each of these joins, back and front, because it secures it in place. It's not entirely necessary, but it just makes it a little bit stronger. So then this rather elaborate thing could either be a tail for my lovely bird, which I think looks pretty. Let's get rid of that bit, which looks pretty lovely, doesn't it? So that could be a tail for him. And a top tip for this, if you are going to use this, do this one. What I think you could do is, just before you sew his tail together, is you pop that inside the fabric, and you just carry on sewing, and a couple of little extra stitches around his tail helps to hold it in place. Similar thing with his, if you were going to use it for his head, you would pop it inside and then just do a couple of stitches, a good few stitches, just to secure it in place. And I just think that's so lovely because the colours are so gorgeous and it's so quirky as well. It just makes a really lovely and unusual design. So that's my little bird, my little Persian inspired bird. And one tiny thing, 30-second hack. And again, I don't want you to do this with me. You can just watch this. If you've got a spare bit of pipe cleaner, that's perfect. All I'm doing is I'm winding a piece of wool around my fingers a few times. Careful not to cut off the blood supply to my fingers. I'm doing it quite loosely. Cutting it off. So I've got a loop now of wool. I'm going to lay it on the table. And you can either use a piece of wool again to tie, or I'm going to use a pipe cleaner just because I've got it here. I'm going to pop a pipe cleaner first through the top, but as I say, you can just as well use a piece of wool. And I'm just going to twist that round. So I've basically popped that through the loop of wool. Another piece of wool or a pipe cleaner, I'm going to pop it about, I don't know, a couple of centimeters down and twist it round nice and tight. So if you imagine that's just a piece of wool, and I'm going to snip off the ends of the wool. Ooh, ping, ping, off they go. So what we've got now is a length of wool that's got a little head at the top, and I'm just literally going to snip the bottom bits. And that makes my little tassel, which I've made there at the bottom of this bangle. So that's so lovely, and you just can tie that to the bottom of the bangle as well. And there we go. So I would have tied my wool. There's a little bit of bangle there. Okay. Ooh, I don't know about you, but I'm exhausted now after all of that. So we have hopefully started off the idea of making a beautiful Persian inspired bird. And I hope I've given you some ideas of how you can create that in your own time using any bits of scraps of material that you've got in the house. Remembering the top tip, which is if you haven't got anything to stuff it with, use a bit of toilet roll, because we've all got a rid-loo roll, haven't we?